So I've been looking into this abortion debate. There is still a lot of talk about the anti-abortion laws that have been triggered or legislated in various states of the country. In Florida, some judge put a block on a 15-week abortion ban. So, an abortion ban for embryos that are 15 weeks or over in development. And there is so much resistance. There's so much resistance to anti abortion legislation. It's crazy. There's so much antagonism, acrimonious discourse, and just rage filled conversations surrounding this very barbaric practice called abortion. Abortion is a barbaric practice. Why do I say that? I remember years ago, back in, I think this was in 2015, I saw this Italian American boxer. I don't remember his name, nor do I care to remember. I don't know. Let's just say his name was Gino or something. Like Gino Spumoni from Hey Arnold. But this boxer, I'm not sure how big of a career this guy had in boxing, but he had something of a following, and he was a professional boxer. And he was, he was a celebrity, right? This guy was a celebrity. He had a significant following. A lot of people online were looking at his videos. And so when you're a man and you're that famous, you're going to have groupies, right? You're going to have women who are going to be pursuing you and coming after you. It's just almost a natural occurrence. Well, it is a natural occurrence, really. I mean, that's just how things are and how things have always been. I mean, King David, right? Bathsheba, King Solomon had 1,000 women. It's just the way it's just the way things are. I mean, we as humans are kind of like walruses, A few males get all the a few males get all the females, and then there's a couple of males that are just out left to dry. Most of the males are just out left to dry. I think the elephant world is the same, maybe even worse than the walrus world. But this boxer was going on about how he got some girl pregnant, and he gave her money for an abortion. And the way he was talking, just very fast and very vicious. And he was like, I gave her the money to get the abortion, and the bitch was still trying to get me. And I think he was from New Jersey or something, which, wouldn't surprise me. But the whole thing is just barbaric. It's like, okay, you're just having sex for the sake of doing it, and then the woman gets pregnant, and then you don't want to have the responsibility that sex comes with. Anytime you have intercourse, you are accepting the risk that you could get pregnant, right? There's always the possibility of getting pregnant, always. And you have a bunch of women, a huge population of women in the United States who, if you were to tell them that you are pro-life, they would tell you, do you think I'm supposed to be responsible to be holding this child when I am not ready for it? It's like, well, you're ready to do that which holds the risk of pregnancy, but you don't want to carry the responsibility that risk can bring about. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to go drive a car. And, when you drive a car, you always are putting yourself at risk of getting into an accident, right? I mean, you can be a very good driver, but there's always a risk that you could get into an accident. And it's like you take that responsibility. Well, it's the same thing with sex. Like, you take that responsibility. So the thing is that when you bring up abortion, right? Because anytime you bring it up, there's always all of these little side quests that people want you to go through. It's like playing a video game, Like you're playing a video game and you want to get to the main mission. You want to do the main mission. Let's say you're playing Shadow of War, or let's say you're playing, I don't know, some old GameCube game, True Crime Streets of LA. You're playing Snoop Dogg or whatever. You want to do the main mission, but all these side quests come up. And that's kind of like how it is arguing with people in general. Not just with abortion, with anything. People want to put all these they want to throw all these side quests at you. Well, what if a woman gets raped? What if a woman is she's pregnant but she's too poor to have the child, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like none of these people want you to just emphasize on this one thing, and that is this a human life? That is it. That's all we should care about. Because if it is a human life, then you have no right to have an abortion. That's it. I don't care if you're poor. I don't care if you feel like you're not ready to have the child or whatever. Like, you can't kill it. That's it. It is immoral. Bottom line. But none of these people want to make that emphasis because they know that they're wrong. You know, and then you have these people who will throw this one side quest at you. They'll say, "Oh, when, you know, if you think that life begins at the moment of conception. Well, at the moment of conception, it's only one cell, two cells, a little cluster of cells. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have a heart. It doesn't have any organs at all. So it's this non-conscious thing. Yes, it is a human life, but it doesn't really have consciousness. So who really cares?" And it's like, okay, so you're putting this emphasis on the embryo having no organs or something like that, or the embryo at the moment of conception having no organs. Okay, what about at 6 weeks? Because the whole law in Texas was, or the whole law and the whole anti-abortion law in Texas is called what? It was called the Heartbeat Bill. The reason for that is because the Texas law bans abortion at 6 weeks and over. Because according to the science, it is at 6 weeks when embryos will usually have a heartbeat. So it has a functioning heart. It has a heart. So it has an organ. It has organs. Like, a heart is an organ. So why aren't you against abortion at that point? Oh, well, because it's completely dependent on the mother, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, well, a fetus at 20 weeks, 21 weeks is still dependent on the mother, but have you seen a human fetus at that time, at that point of development? It's like a fully grown baby. 8 months, 7 months. It's like a fully grown baby in the womb. And they're still for abortion at that point. Or they'll say, well, what about women who are too poor and yada, yada. Or what about women, like what if the pregnancy could endanger the woman's life? You know, what if the woman will die if she gives birth? It's like, okay, in that one instance, it's understandable because you're going to lose a life. But would you still, and for those people who bring up this, who try to throw this side quest at me, I always say, okay, if we can allow abortion just for that one instance, but for nothing else, would you be okay with that? Well, no, because I think a woman should have a right to have an abortion at any point. It's like, well, then why are you using this argument of the life of the mother? When, you know, why not just make an argument for abortion for any reason at all? Why not just say I'm for abortion for any reason, voluntary abortion for any reason? Why not? The reason is because you know damn well that if you were to come up to people and say, I think a woman should have a right to have an abortion for any reason whatsoever, you will look like a selfish woman. Okay, I was about to say a bad word, but I'll refrain. So they try to kind of tug at your heartstrings and say, oh, you know, the life of the mother, Republicans want to kill women and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, why don't you just tell people, why don't you just be honest and tell people what you really want? And that is abortion for any reason. It's kind of like no-fault divorce, you know, like, why not just make the argument for abortion for any reason whatsoever? And I've never heard anybody go in front of cameras and say, I want abortion for any reason. It's always life of the mother, rape, incest, etc. And they throw all these curveballs at you, but it's like, but all these people are for abortion for any reason. And the thing is that anytime you bring up abortion, you have a million voices screaming at you about how they don't want to have to be forced to have a child. Well, it's like no one's forcing you. You did that which holds the risk of pregnancy. So it's like nobody forced you to open up your legs. But they always there's a million voices screaming at you, and when I see so much resistance to these anti-abortion laws, I have to really think to myself that this whole thing with abortion is kind of pointless. It's kind of pointless. All of the states that are pro-choice are going to still have abortion. How are we going to change all those people's minds? You're not. You're going to change some people's minds, but you're not. It's impossible to change most of these people's minds because most of these people have made up their mind. So I don't know. I just find a lot of this stuff to be quite hopeless. There are already in the state of Texas. Texas was sort of Texas and Mississippi were the states that really spearheaded this whole overturning of Roe v. Wade. But you already have like 5 district attorneys saying that they're going to refuse to impose these laws on people in Texas. So there's so much resistance, and I don't think this war has ended. Like this has been a cultural war since the 1970s, and even before that, because when abortion was outlawed throughout this country, there were already people pushing for the legalization of abortion. I believe it was the state of New York that was the first state to legalize abortion before Roe v. Wade. So there has always been this war that's been ongoing. There's actually a very strong history of feminism in the United States. There is. There's a very long history of it. Believe it or not, my great-grandmother's aunt was a suffragist. She was a big activist for women's suffrage in Northern California, and she would go around. I think she would go around passing flyers or something like that, pushing for suffrage and all that. Like, there's a very long history of feminism, and in numerous points, the feminist movement has been right back in the day. Like, we don't want to be abused or whatever. Like, that's understandable, but it has devolved into other things, right? Abortion, etc. So, because there's such a long history of feminism, there's such a long history going, you can go all the way back to Margaret Sanger and people like her. And if you look at the American feminist movement, I mean, there's a big dark side in it. And because there's such a long history of this, and because it's so prevalent today, I just don't really see this war ending. I think the overturning of Roe v. Wade was a huge victory, and I'm not belittling it at all. But let's not deceive ourselves into thinking that, oh yes, it's over, now we can just relax. Like, no, this war is still going on. And it appears at this point to be almost hopeless. Almost, in a way, almost hopeless, because even after overturning Roe v. Wade, I mean, the push for abortion is huge. And the only thing that the overturning of Roe v. Wade did was it simply allowed the states to either abolish or permit abortion. It hasn't completely gotten rid of it. So that means we have to protect the red states at all cost. We have to protect the red states. What happens what happens if you have enough Democrats in Texas, and Texas is on the verge of turning blue? What happens? It's not out of the realm of possibility. It was when Ted Cruz ran against Beto O'Rourke. Yeah, Ted Cruz won, but not by a landslide. So what happens when a state turns blue? You're going to have abortion, a pro-abortion law enacted in that particular state. So the war is not over. There are victories, don't get me wrong, but it's not over. And you're going to have a huge internal shift within the soul of this country to actually have a victory. Until then, it's never going to end. Anyway, yeah. You guys just heard some Theo Longi. God bless.